As we've said, today is All Saints Sunday. And this holiday that we know of as All Saints actually originated sometime in the 4th century and was originally called the Feast of All Martyrs, sometime in the 4th century. And then in the 8th century, Pope Gregory III consecrated a new chapel in the Basilica of St. Peter, consecrated this chapel to all the saints. And the date that the chapel was consecrated was November 1st. And part of this consecration was declaring a dedication of November 1st as the date in which the Christian church would celebrate the All Saints holiday feast and celebration. So as Christians, we have been celebrating All Saints for a really long time. It's a part of who we are as Christians. It's a part of our DNA of the church to take a day to remember, to honor, to celebrate the saints who've come before us. Which got me thinking about that word saint and sainthood. It's an interesting concept. I don't know if you're like me, but I remember growing up throughout my life hearing people call someone else a saint. Especially if someone came and rescued you at a time or you really needed something, they were really helpful. They ended up doing just the right thing at just the right moment. Oh, they're a saint. Someone who went out of their way, someone who did something extra special, or someone who has lots of patience or is really gracious, more loving, more accepting than the average one of us. We often call them a saint. I think we declare sainthood on each other fairly easily. So what's a saint? We as Protestants might declare sainthood on each other fairly easily, but in the Catholic Church, it's not so easy. I've always heard about this process of sainthood in the Catholic Church, but having grown up Methodist, I didn't really know anything about it, so I thought I'd explore it this week. And I discovered there are 4 steps to sainthood in the Catholic Church. For those who grew up Catholic, I hope I don't mess any of this up. 4 steps. None of which can begin, though, until after 5 years of someone having passed away. They have to have passed away for 5 years previously before this process can even begin. But 4 steps. Step 1. After those 5 years, a request is made to begin a sainthood process. This request includes details about the individual, explaining their devotion to God, their virtuous life, the reasons they should be considered for sainthood. And if an individual passes this first step, they are named servant of God. And then they move into step 2, which begins with an investigation, a pretty in-depth investigation into their life. And during the investigation, if the person had writings or other aspects of his or her life that could be studied to make sure that nothing they did or said ever went against the practices of the church, it was all a part of the investigation. And as part of this investigation, I thought this part was fascinating. Somebody would be declared the devil's advocate. It's where the phrase comes from. They would be the devil's advocate, and they would argue against this person, try to find anything that they could to argue against this person becoming a saint in order for the process to be fair and complete. And if the devil's advocate couldn't make any compelling arguments, the process continued. And at the end of this step, if someone was determined to be virtuous and heroic in his or her faith, he or she is declared venerable. This is a really church-filled language process, so bear with me. Because the next step is beatification. Think the Beatitudes from the Gospel of Mark, the Sermon on the Mount. The blessed are, the Beatitudes. Beatification. If the candidate was a martyr, if they died for their faith, he or she may be called blessed. If not, then a miracle has to have been verified in which the person up for sainthood somehow interceded and healed or helped, or somehow a miracle was performed. And if that could be verified, the person was considered blessed. He or she could be venerated, honored in his or her city or region or religious community. And you get through step 3. And then you go on to step 4, the final step. After the person is beatified, another miracle is required for sainthood. A miracle that could be verified, a miracle in which this person after death somehow interceded and helped to heal, or some other kind of miracle. And if that can be verified, then the Pope can declare the person a saint and have an official celebration with a mass honoring the new saint. So, if you're Catholic, to be declared a saint really kind of excludes about 99.99% of us. We're probably not ever going to reach sainthood in the Catholic definition. But we're Methodists. We're Protestants. So we have a bit more of a chance to be considered a saint. And it isn't those who have been officially declared a saint that we recognize on All Saints' Day. It's those who have had that impact in our life, who have taught us what it means to live grounded in God. Those are the saints that we celebrate today. And it actually goes back to the original use of the word saint, the biblical use of the word saint. Because the biblical use of the word saint was a title for God's people, for all God's people, for those who were believers. The saints were those who were believers. And so holiness or sainthood was portrayed as encountering God within the everyday context of life. And it included actions like compassion, kindness, mercy. It was embodying Christ-like qualities in one's life. It wasn't necessarily meant to be something that set you apart, that made you different. It was actually supposed to be what grounded all of those who claimed the title children of God. We are saints. We try to live grounded in God's love. To be a saint is a willingness to live by faith, even when it wasn't popular, even when it isn't popular now, even if it means loss, even if it means great loss. And in the early church, when they talked about saints, it often meant great loss, even loss of life, loss of community, loss of family. To be a believer was a way of life. We hear this throughout the Gospels when Jesus speaks about losing one's life for the sake of faith. He talks about it quite a bit, about what it means to lose one's life for the sake of gaining life. And we hear this in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, just these couple verses when he says, Jesus said to everyone, "All who want to come after me must say no to themselves, take up their cross daily, and follow me. All who want to save their lives will lose them. But all who lose their lives because of me will save them. What advantage do people have if they gain the whole world for themselves, yet perish or lose their lives?" Jesus spoke quite a bit about losing one's life, but he wasn't really talking about physical death. His was a question of priority, of value setting. His was a question about what motivates, what grounds our life. Are we willing to become saints, children of God? He kind of puts it into two camps. He asks, are we motivated by fear and anxiety, by power and wealth, by accumulation and status, by image and comparison, all those things that the society around the early Christian community and our society as well places value on? Because when these things become the foundations for our individual and communal lives, we might have gained the whole world, but according to Jesus, that's when we've lost. Or are we motivated by something different, by faith? Are we grounded in God's grace so much that we extend that grace to others? Are we willing to risk our own security and safety for the sake of love and justice? Are we willing to let go of success as measured by the society and instead embrace the teachings of Jesus? Are we willing to risk change and uncertainty grounded in faith and hope? That's sainthood, as defined by the early church, the early followers of Jesus. Sainthood as a way of life grounded in God, and then living that out in the world. And I think that's why this holiday, this All Saints celebration, has continued to be important for the church. All Saints invites us to take a moment and remember the people who taught us about love and grace, who taught us what it meant to be children of God, the people who taught us about faith, not necessarily so much in their words, but in the very living of their life. The people who made this world better just because they were in it, who made us better just because we knew and loved them. The people who continue to have an impact on us even though they're no longer physically here. The saints. They inspire us. They challenge us. They motivate us. They remind us what is possible in our lives. And so we take a day to remember, to honor, to give thanks for their lives. I want to end with a poem by Merritt Malloy. It's a poem that offers a little different take of what it means to honor and remember and celebrate the saints of our lives. And it isn't so much about holding on, but about letting go. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands, by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. Amen.